Dad's company is mine now. The lawyer confirmed it this morning. You get the lake house. Don't bother fighting this, Vanessa. My brother's voice cracked through the phone speaker, cold and sharp like January ice on our childhood pond. I stood in my cramped Seattle apartment, still in my scrubs from the overnight shift at the hospital, staring at the wall where I'd hung the only photo I had of Dad and me. He was teaching me to fish. I was 7, gap-toothed, holding up a tiny bass like it was a trophy marlin. Ryan, Dad died 3 days ago, I said quietly. We haven't even buried him yet. Yeah, well, grief doesn't pause business, Vanessa. The company needs leadership. Dad understood that. That's why he left it to me. There was something off in his voice. Too rehearsed. Too defensive. The funeral's Saturday. 1 p.m. Mom already picked out your dress, navy blue. She said you'd know where to find it. The line went dead. I sat down on my second-hand couch, the one with the broken spring that always dug into my left hip, the lake house, Dad's fishing cabin up in the San Juans, worth maybe $200,000. Ryan was getting Hartley Industrial Solutions, Dad's manufacturing company. 73 employees. Contracts worth millions. Dad had built it from nothing over 30 years, starting in our garage when Ryan and I were kids. I remembered Dad in that garage, covered in grease, teaching me how a hydraulic press worked while Ryan sat inside watching TV. Ryan had always been Mom's favorite. The golden boy. Star quarterback. Business degree from USC. I went to community college, worked my way through nursing school, paid my own way. Dad had been proud of me. He'd told me so the last time I saw him, 2 weeks before the stroke that killed him. You've got grit, Nessa, he'd said, using his nickname for me. That's worth more than any degree, but apparently not worth more than a fishing cabin. I didn't sleep that night. I kept playing Ryan's call over and over in my head. Something felt wrong. Dad had always talked about the company like it was his legacy for both of us. He'd mentioned it as recently as Christmas. You and Ryan will figure it out together, he'd said. The company needs both kinds of smart, his business sense and your people sense. By morning, I'd made a decision. I called in sick to work for the first time in 2 years. Then I called Gerald Voss, Dad's lawyer for the past 15 years. The man who'd drawn up Dad's will back when Mom and Dad first separated, when I was in high school. Vanessa Hartley. Gerald's warm voice came through the phone. I was hoping you'd call. We need to talk. My heart started racing. About the will? Can you come to my office today? Say, 2 o'clock? I drove the 3 hours to Bellingham in my beat-up Honda, the check engine light glowing like a small sun on my dashboard. Gerald's office was in an old brick building downtown, the kind with creaky wooden floors and windows that rattled when trucks drove by. He was waiting for me with 2 manila folders on his desk. Your father came to see me 4 months ago, Gerald said, folding his hands. He was in his 60s, with silver hair and the kind eyes of someone who'd seen every family drama imaginable. He wanted to update his will. And he left the company to Ryan, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. That's what your brother claims. Gerald opened the first folder. This is the will Ryan presented to me yesterday. He slid a document across the desk. I scanned it. Hartley Industrial Solutions to Ryan Matthew Hartley. The Lake House and Personal Effects to Vanessa Marie Hartley. Dated March 15th of last year. Now, Gerald opened the second folder. This is the will your father and I finalized on September 23rd. 4 months ago. My hands trembled as I took the document. I read it once, twice, then a third time to make sure I wasn't hallucinating from exhaustion. Hartley Industrial Solutions was to be split equally between Ryan Matthew Hartley and Vanessa Marie Hartley, with a provision that Vanessa would assume operational control for the first 3 years, given her demonstrated commitment to the company's core values of integrity and care for our employees. The lake house went to both of us as well, to be maintained as a family gathering place. There was a handwritten note in the margin in Dad's familiar scrawl. Nessa understands what the company is really worth. Not dollars. People. I don't understand, I whispered. How does Ryan have a different will? Gerald's face darkened. That's what we need to determine. The will Ryan has is outdated. It was the previous version, before your father's final revisions. The question is whether your brother found the old copy among your father's papers and is hoping no one notices, or if something more deliberate occurred. You mean fraud? I mean, we need to be very careful with our accusations until we have all the facts. He pulled out another document. Your father also left this for you. He told me to give it to you in person if anything happened to him. It was a letter, written in Dad's handwriting on his company letterhead. Dear Nessa, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I hope you're not too sad, honey. I had a good run, caught a lot of fish, raised a daughter I'm proud of. I need you to know something. 3 months ago, your brother came to me with a business proposition. He wanted me to take the company public, sell to a larger firm, said we could both retire rich. When I said no, that I'd rather keep it small and keep our people employed, he got angry, angrier than I'd ever seen him. He said I was wasting potential, that I was choosing employees over family. I told him that employees are family. That's when he said something that broke my heart. Dad, you always chose her over me. I don't know if he really believes that, or if he was just hurt, but it made me realize I needed to protect what I built, not from outsiders, but from my own son's worst impulses. The company isn't just a paycheck, Nessa. It's Martha in accounting who's putting 3 kids through college. It's Jorge on the factory floor who just became a citizen. It's 73 families who depend on us to do right by them. Ryan sees dollar signs. You see people. That's why I'm trusting you with this. Be smart. Be strong. And remember what I always told you. The truth is in the details. Love you, kiddo. Dad. I couldn't stop the tears. They fell onto the paper, smudging the ink. There's something else, Gerald said gently. Your father's assistant, Patricia, called me yesterday. She said your brother had been in your father's home office the day after he died, before anyone else arrived. She thought it was odd because he specifically asked her to leave, said he needed privacy to grieve. The pieces were falling into place. Ryan had found the old will. Maybe he'd even destroyed evidence of the new one. Or maybe he just decided to pretend the new will didn't exist, hoping Mom would back him up and I'd be too grief-stricken to fight. What do I do? I asked. Gerald smiled. We go to the will reading on Saturday. We let your brother think he's won, and then we present the real will. But Vanessa, you need to be prepared. This will get ugly. Your mother will likely side with Ryan. Some of your extended family might too. Are you ready for that? I thought about the 73 families. I thought about Dad teaching me about hydraulic presses in our garage. I thought about Jorge and Martha and all the people whose names I didn't know but whose lives depended on someone caring more about them than about profit margins. I'm ready, I said. The next 3 days were the longest of my life. I worked my shifts at the hospital in a daze, my mind constantly running through scenarios. What would Ryan say? What would Mom do? Would anyone believe me? I wanted to call Ryan, to confront him, but Gerald had been clear. Don't tip our hand. The element of surprise is all we have. Friday night, I drove to Bellingham and checked into a cheap motel near the funeral home. I couldn't stay at Mom's house, couldn't pretend everything was normal. I lay awake staring at the water-stained ceiling, listening to the couple arguing next door, wondering if Dad would be proud of what I was about to do or disappointed that his children were at war before he was even in the ground. Saturday morning arrived gray and drizzling, the kind of Pacific Northwest weather that matches funerals perfectly. I put on the navy dress Mom had picked out. It fit like it was made for someone else, tight in the shoulders, loose in the waist. It had been Ryan's color choice, I realized. Ryan's taste, even in death, even in grief. Mom was dressing me to match Ryan's preferences. The funeral was at St. James Lutheran, the church Dad had attended sporadically when Mom dragged him. I arrived early, expecting to slip in unnoticed, but Mom was already there in the front pew, dressed in black, her face carefully made up to hide the tears. Vanessa, she said, her voice tight. She stood and hugged me, but it was the kind of hug that doesn't quite connect, bodies touching but souls staying separate. You look tired. I worked a double shift Wednesday, I said. Still playing nurse? Ryan's voice came from behind me. I turned. He was in a charcoal suit, his hair freshly cut, looking every inch the successful businessman. He'd put on weight since I'd last seen him at Thanksgiving, his face fuller, the beginning of jowls forming. Success or stress eating? Maybe both. Still saving lives, I corrected. How's the tech startup going? His face darkened. That was a sore spot. Ryan's big venture in San Francisco had crashed and burned 2 years ago. He'd moved back to Bellingham 6 months ago, ostensibly to be closer to Dad. I'd wondered at the time if he was running from debt. Now I wondered if he'd been circling the company like a shark, waiting for his chance. "We're not doing this today," Mom said sharply. "Today we honor your father." The service was beautiful and terrible. People stood up and told stories about Dad, his fishing buddies, his employees. Martha from accounting cried when she talked about how Dad had paid for her son's surgery when insurance denied the claim. Jorge spoke in halting English about how Dad had sponsored his citizenship application. Ryan gave the eulogy. He talked about Dad's business acumen, his vision, his legacy of success. He didn't mention the garage, or the hydraulic press, or the fact that Dad had turned down dozens of buyout offers because he refused to let his employees become redundant in some corporate merger. I didn't speak. I couldn't trust my voice. After the burial, after the reception at Mom's house where people ate finger sandwiches and spoke in hushed voices, after most of the guests had left, Gerald arrived. "It's time," he said quietly. We gathered in Mom's living room. Me, Ryan, Mom, and Aunt Carol, Dad's sister. Gerald set his briefcase on the coffee table, the same coffee table where Dad used to let me build Lego castles while he watched football. "Thank you all for being here," Gerald began. "I know this is difficult. Edmund wanted his final wishes to be respected, so I'll be reading his last will and testament." Ryan leaned back on the couch, his arm draped over the back cushion, the picture of confidence. Mom sat next to him, her hand on his knee. I sat across from them in Dad's old recliner, the leather cracked and worn in the shape of his body. "Before we begin," Ryan said, "I think we all know what Dad wanted. He and I discussed this many times. The company needs strong leadership. Vanessa has her own career. This is best for everyone." "Let's let Gerald read the will," Aunt Carol said softly. She'd always been kind to me, the only person in Dad's family who hadn't treated Mom's side like they were intruders at family gatherings. Gerald opened his briefcase and pulled out 2 folders. "I have a procedural question first," he said. "Ryan, where did you obtain the copy of the will you sent me?" Ryan's confident smile faltered slightly. "From Dad's office. In his desk." "And you sent it to me when?" "Monday, the day after he died. I thought we should get things in order." "Interesting," Gerald said, "because the will you sent me was dated March of last year. But your father and I met in September to update his will. You were unaware of this meeting?" The room went very quiet. Mom's hand tightened on Ryan's knee. "Dad and I handled everything together," Ryan said, his voice gaining an edge. "He would have told me if he'd changed his will." "Would he?" Gerald pulled a document from the second folder. "Because according to this note from your father's calendar, marked private, he specifically chose a day when you were out of town. September 23rd. You were in Portland for a conference, weren't you?" Ryan's face flushed red. "I don't know what you're implying, but—" "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts." Gerald's voice remained calm, professional. "The question is simple. Did you know about the September will, or did you genuinely believe the March will was current?" "This is ridiculous," Mom interjected. Ryan found the will in his father's desk. He acted in good faith. "If there's a newer will, fine, let's see it. But I won't have you attacking my son at his father's funeral." "Of course." Gerald pulled out the September will. "This was executed 4 months ago, with 2 witnesses present. My paralegal and Patricia Donovan, Edmund's assistant. It supersedes all previous wills." He began to read. With each sentence, I watched Ryan's face change. Confidence to confusion, confusion to anger, anger to something darker, colder. When Gerald reached the part about equal ownership and my operational control for 3 years, Ryan stood up. "No," he said flatly. "No, that's not what Dad wanted. He and I had an understanding. The company was mine. We agreed. He promised me." Mom started. "He promised me!" Ryan's voice cracked. "After everything I gave up, coming back here, leaving San Francisco, putting my life on hold to be close to him, to learn the business, he promised me the company would be mine, not hers. Mine." "You didn't put your life on hold," I said quietly. "You were running from a failed business and debt collectors." Ryan's eyes locked on mine, and for a moment, I saw pure hatred there. "You think you know everything? You think because you were Dad's little fishing buddy, Because you learned how to unclog a hydraulic press one time when you were 8, that you know anything about running a company? I know what Dad cared about, I said, standing to face him. People. Not profit margins. Not buyout offers. People. This is exactly why the company should be mine, Ryan said, turning to Gerald. She's a nurse. She knows nothing about business. She'll run it into the ground in 6 months. Is that what Dad would have wanted? Your father, Gerald said, his voice cutting through Ryan's rant like a knife, specifically chose Vanessa because of her values. Not in spite of her lack of business experience, but because she understands what he built better than anyone, including you. I'm contesting this, Ryan said. This will is invalid. Dad wasn't in his right mind. He had a stroke. He wasn't thinking clearly. The will was executed 4 months before his stroke, Gerald said. And I can assure you, he was completely lucid. We spent 2 hours discussing his decisions. He knew exactly what he was doing. Then someone manipulated him, Ryan said, pointing at me. She poisoned him against me. She's always been jealous that I was the successful one, the one with the business degree, the one Dad actually respected. Ryan, stop, Aunt Carol said. Listen to yourself. But Ryan wasn't stopping. He turned to Mom. You know this is wrong. You know Dad wanted me to have the company. Tell them how he used to talk about Ryan taking over, about building a legacy. Tell them. Mom's face was pale. She looked at Ryan, then at me, then at Gerald. I don't know what Edmund wanted, she said finally. We'd been separated for 6 years. We spoke cordially, but we weren't. We didn't discuss his business. But he talked about me, Ryan insisted. He was proud of me. He wanted me to succeed. He was proud of both his children, Aunt Carol said gently. Ed talked about Vanessa all the time, how she worked 2 jobs to get through nursing school, how she volunteered at the free clinic, how she reminded him of himself when he started the company, determined to do things the right way even when it was harder. That's not the same as being qualified to run. The will is valid, Gerald said, his voice firm. It was properly executed, properly witnessed, and reflects Edmund's clear intent. Vanessa will assume operational control of Hartley Industrial Solutions, with equal ownership split between both of you. If you contest it, Ryan, you'll lose. And you'll likely destroy what relationship you have left with your sister in the process. Is that really what you want? The silence that followed was suffocating. Ryan stared at me like I was a stranger, like I'd stolen something that belonged to him. Maybe in his mind, I had. I need air, he said finally, and walked out. Mom followed him. I stood there in Dad's recliner, my legs shaking, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. You did well, Aunt Carol said, putting her hand on my shoulder. Ed would be proud, but I didn't feel proud. I felt sick. Exhausted. Like I'd just won a battle, but the war was far from over. Gerald packed up his papers. The official reading is complete. I'll file the will with probate next week. Ryan has the right to contest, but I'll be honest, Vanessa. I don't think he will. It would require him to prove incompetence or undue influence, and he has no evidence of either. He's angry, but he's not stupid. What happens now? I asked. Now you learn how to run a company, Gerald said with a small smile. I'd suggest starting with Patricia. She knows everything. And Vanessa? Your father left one more thing. He handed me an envelope. He said to open this after the will reading. Inside was a single key and a note. Nessa, the key to the company isn't in the office. It's at the lake house, dock box under the bench. When you're ready. Love, Dad. 3 weeks later, after I'd given my 2 weeks' notice at the hospital, after I'd met with every single employee at Hartley Industrial Solutions, after I'd apologized to Martha and Jorge and the other 71 people for the uncertainty and promised them I'd do everything in my power to honor Dad's vision, I drove to the lake house. It was a cold February morning, the kind where the sun looks watery and weak through the clouds. I walked down to the dock, the boards creaking under my feet, and found the box under the bench where Dad used to sit and watch for fish. Inside was a journal, Dad's journal, leather-bound and worn, filled with his handwriting. I sat on the bench and started reading. It wasn't a business journal. It was personal. Thoughts about his children, regrets about his marriage, hopes for the future. And there, dated 2 days before he met with Gerald to change his will, was an entry that made me cry for the first time since the funeral. Ryan came to see me today. He's in trouble, financial trouble, worse than I thought. He wants me to sell the company or take it public so he can cash out his inheritance. He actually said inheritance like I'm already dead. He said if I don't, he'll never forgive me. I told him I can't do that to our people. He called me a fool. Nessa would understand. Nessa has always understood. She gets her stubbornness from me, thank God. She'll fight for what's right even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. I need to protect the company from Ryan's desperation. I hate that it's come to this. I love my son, but I love 73 families more. I have to choose the greater good. Nessa will hate me for putting this burden on her, but she's the only one I can trust. I closed the journal and looked out at the lake. The water was still, mirror smooth, reflecting the gray sky. Dad hadn't chosen me because I was better than Ryan. He'd chosen me because I was the only choice that saved everyone else. It wasn't a gift. It was a responsibility. And sitting there on that dock, holding Dad's journal, I made my peace with it. Ryan never contested the will. He showed up at the company twice in the next month, both times to demand his share of the profits. I told him the same thing both times. We were equal partners, and when there were profits to distribute, he'd get his half. But first, we were investing in new equipment, in safety improvements, in raises for our longest-serving employees. He called me an idiot. I called him my brother and told him I hoped someday he'd see what Dad saw. He stopped coming around after that. Mom took his side, of course. I haven't spoken to her in 4 months. She sends birthday cards and Christmas gifts, trying to maintain some illusion of normalcy. But we both know the truth. I chose Dad's legacy over her son's comfort, and she'll never forgive me for that. Aunt Carol visits once a month. She brings casseroles and listens to me vent about supply chain issues and workers' comp claims and all the boring, difficult details of running a manufacturing company with no business degree and no idea what I'm doing. "You're doing fine," she always says. Better than fine. Ed knew what he was doing. I hope she's right. Last week, Jorge came into my office. He'd been promoted to floor supervisor, something Dad had planned before he died but never got to implement. Jorge stood in the doorway, nervous, holding his worn baseball cap. "Miss Vanessa," he said, "the crew, we take a collection. For your father, for you, for saying thank you." He handed me an envelope. Inside was a card signed by all 73 employees and a gift certificate to a fishing charter service. "Your father, he teach me to fish too," Jorge said, smiling. "At the company picnic, he say fishing is like business. You need patience. You need to know when to wait and when to pull. You need to respect what you catch. I think you know this, yes?" I couldn't speak. I just nodded. After he left, I sat at Dad's old desk, in the office that still smelled faintly of his cologne, and I cried. But they were good tears this time, grateful tears. Ryan was wrong about one thing. I wasn't qualified to run this company, but I was qualified to care about the people in it. And sometimes, that's enough. Sometimes, that's everything. I keep Dad's journal in the top drawer of my desk. When things get hard, when I'm questioning every decision, when I'm pretty sure I'm about to bankrupt 73 families, I pull it out and read his last entry. "Nessa, if you're reading this, you're probably terrified. Good. Fear means you care. And caring is what this company needs. Trust yourself. Trust the people around you. And remember, the truth is in the details. Look close enough, and you'll always find the answer. I believe in you. Now you just have to believe in yourself. Love, Dad." So I'm trying. Every day, I'm trying. And every day, I imagine Dad on that dock, watching the water, smiling at the thought of his stubborn daughter learning to run a company the same way she learned to fish. Patiently, carefully, with respect for what she's been given. The truth was in the details. And the detail that mattered most was this. Dad didn't leave me a company. He left me a family. 73 families to be exact. And I'll fight like hell to keep them all together.